My name is Dr. Ian Storch. I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist and osteopathic physician, and you are listening to D.O. or Do Not. If you are interested in joining our team or have suggestions or comments, please contact us at doordonotpodcast.com. Share our link with your friends and like us on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you enjoy this episode.
My name is Hadia Tariq, and I'm an OMS1 at the Alabama College of Osteopathic Medicine. On today's episode, we interview Philip Nizza D.O., a board-certified infectious disease doctor. Dr. Nizza went to medical school at NYITCOM, followed by a 3-year internal medicine residency at North Shore University Hospital, and ultimately a 2-year infectious disease fellowship at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, arguably the most prestigious cancer center in the world. Dr. Nizza discusses with us his responsibilities as an ID physician, as well as how his DO degree shaped his experience and perspective on medicine and patient care. Dr. Nizza goes on to share with us how he met his wife, Dr. Natalie Assalone, during medical school at NYITCOM, and how they built their life together through residency and raising children in a 2-physician household. He ultimately relates Natalie's battle with a rare cancer and her tragic death. He touches on the unique experience of love and loss made more difficult through the lens of a skilled physician. This episode touches on heavy topics and difficult experiences that many of us do not expect to encounter in our lives. However, Dr. Nizza's story is an inspiring one and teaches us the many valuable lessons he has learned despite the hardships he has faced. Dr. Nizza and his family have created the Natalie Assalone Nizza Memorial Award in her honor, which gives $5,000 annually to a graduating student who demonstrates dedication as a parent while simultaneously balancing their passion for medicine. Last year, the award was given to Dr. Larissa Ahayeva, who grew up in Belarus and moved to America to better her daughter's life. She is training to become an OB/GYN. This year, the award went to Dr. Yisrael Grabi, a father of 3 who matched to Staten Island Hospital for internal medicine. Dr. Nizza has asked that anyone moved by Natalie's story consider a donation, no matter how large or small, to the scholarship fund. Donations can be made through the nyit.edu website by clicking on the right upper quadrant on the Give icon, choosing Other, and typing in Nizza Memorial. We hope you are moved by this episode. Today, I am interviewing Dr. Philip Nizza, who is an infectious disease doctor from New York. Welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
So, can we start with you telling us about what your normal day looks like?
Sure. So infectious disease is basically a hospital-based specialty. So I get up usually on a regular day. It involves me. We round at 3 hospitals. We rounded at 1 university hospital, 2 community hospitals. So an average day is get up, make rounds at that hospital, and that's where you spend most of your day, wherever you're stationed. And that usually involves rounding on about 15 to 20 follow-ups and probably 3 to 7 new consults every day. There is 1 half day a week where I do office hours from 1 to 5. And outpatient ID is not very brisk. Maybe from 7 to 12 patients in the office, mostly follow-ups for people who go home with IVs via PICC lines or home infusion, some travel shots, some outpatient consults. That's a half a day a week. And then weekends are really where it's hard, which really what's tiring me out after 20 years is you round at all 3 hospitals. You're on call from essentially 4 o'clock Friday afternoon through Monday morning at 8 a.m., handling pages from 3 consults. So you could do as many as 15 to 18. I've done over 20 consults in a day, rounded on as many as 35 to 40 people a day, each day of the weekend. And our practice is at least merciful. We give ourselves a day off during the week. So like today's Tuesday, which is my day off, I'm able to do this and be home, and it gets me to get all my errands done, bank and things, especially if I'm on call this weekend. So I had to get everything done today that I won't be doing Saturday and Sunday because I'll be working. So that's the average day. But I do about 900 consults a year, inpatient consults in the hospital, and I don't know how many thousands of follow-ups, quite a bit. So it's a busy service.
It's quite busy, yes.
Yeah.
So how did you become interested in medicine and decide you wanted to be a doctor?
So that's a good question. I'm from a family of very blue-collar people. My father was a carpenter. My mother worked as a receptionist. There are no other doctors in the family prior to me. I have a sister who's an accountant, brother who's a pharmacist, probably the closest thing to the health field. And when I graduated high school, I liked science, But at some point, I kind of realized I didn't want to be a lab guy. I wasn't comfortable doing research. It wasn't my forte. And I wanted to combine science and being social. And so it wasn't one of these lifelong burning desires. It said, well, medicine seems like the right thing to do. And that's how I wound up there. And that's the reason I applied to medical school. And ironically enough, was very lucky the way it all worked out. So I started off with a big, very private, all boys Catholic high school, finished very well. Thought I was a big shot, wasn't. Went to college, got my butt kicked for a couple of years, handled the whole college experience probably pretty poorly in terms of thinking I was going to fly through it, and crashed and burned for a couple of years. Got myself back on track and was lucky to get into medical school, and here I am. So I've been through every level of training, from the big name school to the no name school, back to the big name place. So I think I've had a lot of different experiences. So I'm just blessed and happy to be a doctor, to be honest with you. Can't see doing anything else.
I think that journey is something that a lot of pre-med students can relate to.
100%, yeah.
College and medical school can be very humbling.
Very humbling. Very humbling, especially college. Medical school, not so much. I enjoyed it because you were doing something you love. The work isn't so bad. When you're suddenly sitting through an organic chemistry class, not having understanding why it applies to your life at all, bit of a different experience, and a lot of weeding out, because I went to a big program. I went to NYU for undergrad, which was, started off with a 300-person organic one auditorium. And then by the final, there were 25 sole survivors who were strung out, barely making the grades. So it's a different experience, not one that I'd recommend, to be honest with you.
When you did go to undergrad, and other than the weeding classes, were there any experiences that led you into medicine or osteopathic school specifically?
So osteopathic school was a revelation to me. I'll be frank and honest. I had no idea what it was. I was applying, and now NYU, like I said, big school, not the most personal. I met with this advisor, and we were talking about medical school, and she was looking at my grades, probably thinking, what the hell is this guy think he's doing applying to medical school? And she said, have you ever heard of osteopathic medical school? I said, no, I have not. She said, well, there's an excellent school in Westbury. You should go check it out. And I said, all right. So that night, I guess it was pre-internet, I actually kind of tried to research what I can about it. This is now circa 1993. So couldn't really do anything on the web. So I looked a little bit into it. And I said, yeah, let me go on the interview. I didn't want to leave the country. I was pretty sure about that. I wanted to stay in the United States. I didn't want to be an FMG for whatever reason from that. And I don't think I was probably mature enough already to leave home. So I went on the interview, and I thought I was going to get panned. And all I remember is the one saving grace of my undergraduate education. So I was interviewing with the man, and he looked at my transcript, and the guy said, oh, you got a couple of C's, and I think it was physics or organic chemistry. And the person interviewing with him looked at him and said, oh, he went to NYU. Their pre-med program is terrible. It's ridiculously hard. And I was like, oh, maybe somebody gets it. Maybe that was that moment I kind of knew. And then once I got the acceptance, I was more than overjoyed to accept. I applied to a couple other New York schools. I got waitlisted at one. I'm from Long Island. I wanted to stay on Long Island. So that's where I wound up. So, yeah. I didn't know anything about osteopathic medicine until almost 2 months before, a month before I interviewed there, and then obviously when I was there. So, but I had no idea prior to that.
How was your experience at the school you ended up going to?
School was great. I loved it. The rotations were excellent. We got to do a lot of city hospitals in Brooklyn and Manhattan for the rotations. The professors were excellent, and it became a pretty tight-knit group over the years. I think once you're in medical school, and I think I can stress this enough, once you're in, you're in. And then it's up to you to put the time in. You could be a good doctor coming out of a quote unquote osteopathic, not a real medical school. You get that crap every now and again, which is nonsense. But if you put the time in and put the effort into being a doctor, it will pay off if you do the work. And once I was there, I loved it. I made some lifelong friends I still know. And I love the whole experience. The rotations were excellent. Professors were very good. I really wouldn't change it for anything, actually. Really enjoyed it. It's changed a lot. When I first stepped back on the campus, now 20 plus years after I graduated, I almost didn't recognize it. But it's beautiful. And, I really, like I said, I wouldn't change anything. It was a good experience for me. Probably the best educational experience of my time. So.
Wow. Nice. So when you were there, did you seek out any specific opportunities like research or clubs?
No, I wasn't really a research guy. I'm trying to think if I did any clubs, if I can remember. I don't think I was heavily involved. I got to be honest with you. I think I spent a lot of time studying. I was living at home to save money, so I was commuting every day from home by car. Spent a lot of time in the basement, either in my house or in the library. I don't think I did many extracurriculars. I'm trying to think if I was in any clubs. Honestly, it's a while. I played a lot of foosball. They had a nice foosball table up there, and they also worked on my ping pong game, which was also in the student lounge there. So I got really good at ping pong, which has come in handy now that I play with my boys. But no, I got to say I was probably a bit of a nerd. I probably spent most of my time headfirst in a book more than anything else.
Well, that is the most important thing at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
yeah. At the end of the day, I just wanted to get there, and once you know you're in and you can taste it, it feels great. So it wasn't hard to absorb the info.
Definitely. So my next question is, how did you meet your spouse and how did you navigate medical school and residency together?
So weird. My spouse was 2 years behind me when we met. So she was on the on-campus portion of the education. I was on the off-campus part of the education. I went to the library to copy what they call the green book at the time, which is probably foreign to you guys now, which was a green book listing all the residency programs to apply to when I was looking to go to a residency program. So I got the green book at the library. There was only one copy machine at NYITCOM. Don't ask me why. And they had to get away for the copy card from the lady. And the lady said, there's someone down there's already got the card, but you're next. So I just go wait. It's fine. I took the green book down. She was at the copy machine copying information for a test, study materials for a test. And we just struck up a conversation. And as they would say, the rest is history. But if we had not been in that space, I'm not a huge believer in karma, but if we had not been in that space, 1 or 2 minutes apart in any direction, our paths would have never crossed. So I still to this day find that fact astounding. As far as going to school together, I think the best thing about dating another doctor or dating someone even in your same medical school is built-in compassion, built-in understanding. Like there was never a debate. It was, I got to study tonight. Okay. Or I got a big test tomorrow. Okay. Or I had a long day in my rotation. I just want to crash. Okay. When people are doing the same thing and you have shared pain, so to speak, you understand that person's drive, motivation, hours, mental stress completely. So it leads to a very seamless, wonderful relationship where we never explained anything to each other. If it was, yeah, can I do it or I can, or can I be there or I can't? There was never any misunderstanding from residency through when I was a fellow, through when we were both attendings together, through even raising a family. When you have children, it was, can you make this event? No, I got to work late. You got this one, or you got this, or I can't be there. It's nice that it's so natural. And I think you'd have to be the ultimate hypocrite in the world being a doctor and not understanding if your spouse is a doctor who's working a similar grind. So I think it was one of the best parts of a relationship, besides shared culture and shared background. Shared profession is actually probably the most important of those things.
That is such a good point. I think with medicine, unless you have experienced it yourself, you just can't explain it to anybody else.
People don't get it. Family members, friends, even like, what do you mean you're not coming? I can't. Well, I got to work late, or my shift ran over. I didn't get out till 8 o'clock. I'm not going to be home. Or no one gets that. So unless you're doing it, there's no chance of anyone really having this inner gestalt of, I don't understand. Why can't he just leave? And you just can't leave. And I think only people in our fraternity get that. People or physicians get that. No one else does. So it's definitely a relationship saver in terms of just everything was just a nod and completely understood. So we never fought about time because we knew our time was precious to each other. So when we had it together, it was great. But if it didn't happen, or if it was one of us was just passed out on the couch from sheer exhaustion, the other one just said, all right, I get it. So it was great.
Now, a bit of a transition back into, how did you decide on the specialty that you are practicing right now?
This one's pretty easy. I stink at procedures. The old days, they used to have a procedure log when you were a resident. When you actually did procedures, but everything was virtual. You had to do 10 IVs, 10 lumbar punctures. You had to have a little purple book, and you ran around like an idiot during the 3 years in the residency to have someone sign off. So someone was dying. 18 interns showed up looking to get their code book logged up for sticking in a central line or doing a lumbar puncture. So as things went on, I'm like, I didn't like I'm not a proceduralist, so I wasn't particularly wonderful with my hands. I also didn't like the idea that each subspecialty kind of pigeonholed you into a set of things. If you're doing GI and you got to learn to scope, if you're doing Pulm in critical care. It's about ID. What's the most important thing is the problem solving. Really drew me, the analytics of it all. You had to have a good, and still have to have a good base of internal medicine to do infectious disease because it covers every subspecialty. So the swath of pathology is broad, and it makes you appreciate things from all different disciplines in terms of what you have to know. So I like the problem solving. I like that. And then when I rotated, in one of my first rotations, my mentor was an ID doctor, and my medicine rotation was at PGY3. No, PGY3, what am I saying? I'm MS3. And I just loved her. She was brilliant. And what she did, and she spent time in a hospital. And I found hospitals so much more interesting than outpatients. Outpatients being pigeonholed in an office, waiting for someone who may or may not show up, who may come in with 5 pages of internet questions they want to ask you. It was too wild card for me. I liked the hospital setting. These were the critically ill people. These were the people I was helping. I found that much more amenable or more enjoyable for me. So very few hospital-based specialties. There's ID as being a hospitalist, which wasn't a thing yet when I first started. There were no hospitalists. That was a very new term. Started maybe around 98 or 99. But there were no hospitalists. So either you were an internist and you ran back and forth from the hospital to the office so I could check out what I had, which I didn't want to do, or you did a hospital-based thing. But all the other fields, with exception of maybe critical care, had a large, significant outpatient component, and they just didn't interest me. So probably a combination of very good mentors. When I was at PGY, I keep saying PGY, MS3 and 4, I had 2 very strong mentors that were both infectious disease doctors, and I learned so much from them. They just kind of inspired me to go into it.
What was your application process like to residency? How did you choose your program?
Okay, so different now in New York. Everything has changed, right? So where I am, NYITCOM was really one of the only 2 New York medical schools on Long Island. There was NYITCOM, and then there was Stony Brook. So to stay on Long Island, the big programs out here, which is now called NYU, which used to be something called Winthrop, and then there was Stony Brook, there was North Shore, before it was Northwell, before the giant empire became what it was a very good university hospital, and there was LIJ. I knew I wanted to stay on Long Island. My family was here. I'd been dating someone at the time who was in Long Island, so I didn't really want to move. And the way for us it worked that coming out of an osteopathic medical school, if you wanted North Shore, which with Manhasset, which was a very good program, you really had to dazzle on your sub-I. So I did a sub-I there and the telemetry unit, and you had to bust it. You had to be better than everybody. And we worked hard. All the NYITCOM guys that went through there, that stayed there for residency, they made their sub-I like their life. And so I was lucky enough to make a good impression. So when I applied, I knew I was getting in. That climate has changed in that now, since all these other systems have feeder medical schools into these systems, I understand from what I hear, it's harder for osteopathic medical students coming out of New York anyway to get into these programs, which are being fed by their own medical schools. So Northwell has its own medical school now, so it puts its own medical students in its residencies. Same with NYU. So I think it's changed. I kind of got in at a very good time where they were taking 7 to 8 DOs a year. Matter of fact, classmates of mine made very huge strides. This Dr. Infectious, who I graduated with in medical school, followed me to residency. He was the first DO ever taken into North Shore's cardiology program. He was the first cardiology fellow from an osteopathic medical school. My friend who I graduated became the first ever taken into Winthrop, or what is now NYU, in Mineola's first OBGYN resident taken out of a DO school. So we had some pretty groundbreaking guys doing stuff that no one else was doing because they worked their tail off and they worked hard to make an impression. I don't know what it's like now, but again, I pretty much knew I wanted to stay on Long Island. Where I wanted to be was North Shore, Manhasset. That's where I wound up. And it was a great residency. Yeah, everything is changing. I mean, there's no such thing as private practice anymore. There's a whole bunch of things that have changed that people like yourself will never know almost in terms of what is a private practice, or what is the idea of a hospital, what a hospitalist, or no palliative care doctors. Like, there's a lot of things that have popped up now that weren't present when I was in training, which for better or for worse, I think made us better doctors. But you have to go with the times you live in. So I sweated it out. Believe me, when I applied, I wasn't sure I was going to get in. And it was my first choice, and I was lucky enough to match. So I guess I made a good impression.
Yeah, must have.
Yes.
I know you kind of answered this, but if you were to choose between a large or a small institution, private or public, for training, how did you decide between those two?
I think training is about pathology. You go with what you went to see, where you're going to learn the most. So as much as I work in a community hospital now, and there are lovely places to work as an attending, I think as a resident or an intern, you have to get a place where you can get the most pathology so you'll never forget what you see. So North Shore was a university hospital, 500 beds, saw everything. A fellowship after that was at Sloan Kettering. The premise I thought there being that if you're going to be an infectious disease doctor in a large institution where no one has an immune system at all, you better learn what you're doing. And the program director there is Dr. Sepkowitz, who's actually he's nationally, occasionally, he's been on Late Night with Jon Stewart. He just did an article for CNN. He's a very charming guy, but he was a great mentor. So as soon as I met him, I knew I wanted to train with him for my fellowship. So I think the big places are where you train. And I think what you experience that you can't necessarily always get at a small institution. So look, I'm not saying I have a residency program where the hospital I'm mainly at now, which is a 240 bed community hospital. But I think the rigors and the pathology is not quite what I saw when I was a resident in a 500 bed hospital. There's just too many things you need to see, especially internal medicine wise, where you need to round yourself and see everything.
That's a really good point. I've never even thought about the aspect of the pathology.
Yeah, it's the pathology, right? You're only as good as the pathology. As much as you study for everything you've ever seen, you'll never forget the case you see, not the one you read about.
Right.
So your first case of, name it, you'll never forget it. My first case of pneumocystis pneumonia in an HIV patient around the time before antiretrovirals were really potent, you'll never forget seeing that. I saw a large breast abscess and my first day in the city, and a diabetic that was uncontrolled. I could almost see her face. I had an ALL girl at Sloan Kettering who was a bone marrow transplant who had a very rare mycobacterium infection, Mycobacterium haemophilus. I remember the case. I remember the girl. Her name was Candace Bay. I remember her dad. He was an Islander family. Once cases I wasn't going to see anywhere else. So we had a person in fellowship who had was loaded with toxoplasmosis. So much of it so you can actually see it in a peripheral blood smear because they were a bone marrow transplant who died. So pathology, you can read all you want, but once you see a case, you go, it's locked in there forever, as opposed to churning through Harrison's or whatever you have to read. So I think pathology is huge to what you train. If you're going to go to a place that only sees diabetic foot infections and community-acquired pneumonia, great, but you could that's not as valuable as seeing something broader.
So what was your residency like, and did you have any different experiences as a DO?
Yeah, so residency was great, hard. In the days, I almost say days of giants because I almost feel like I'm old now. But, you worked, ICU rotations, for example. I started July 1 as an intern in the ICU. They said, just put this guy. He seems pretty good. Throw him in the ICU. So I remember being up for, maybe 25 hours in a row. Well, the longest time in a row was 30. I think I was up 31 hours in a row once. And just doing 15 admissions in an ICU. Here's how you do an A-line. See one, do one, teach one. Guy showed, I'll never forget my second day in the ICU. I had a 6'9" resident, was still a very good friend of mine this day. He went to ID. And he said, go put an A-line on this person in hypertensive crisis. And I put the line in and I missed. And I pulled the line out and the blood was like a geyser shooting up to the ceiling. I said, Paul, just get up there and put pressure on it. So I was like standing on like a stool with all my body weight, trying to stop this bleeding arterial puncture. So it was great. And the DO part was interesting. Here's where I really remember it. We used to rotate. This is before I became a fellow at Sloan Kettering. So North Shore used to send residents. Sloan Kettering doesn't have its own house staff. It only has fellowships for oncology and other stuff, but no residents. They all go transplanted from NYU and other places. We were in this big pathology conference, and it was a lot of snooty NYU residents who thought they were the best residents in the whole damn world. And so I was in a room, and I'll never forget this. I don't know why I remember this, but in a room, and this lady was doing over pathology slides, and she put up a slide of these cells with these big, giant vacuoles on them, and said, "Does anyone know what this is?" And I jerked up my hand. I don't even know why I remembered it. I still remember this day. I said, it's Chiari-Akagashi syndrome. It's empty vacuole disease. Whole room went silent. She went, wow. I said, yeah, I know that. So I always felt we had to do it better, carry ourselves stronger, carry ourselves higher. I never wanted to hear, oh, he's, because there was discrimination when I was a medical student. The NYU kids who used to go to North Shore used to get special rotations with us attending. She would never include any students that weren't in which certainly would not include any of the D.O. students. And she looked down on you. I mean, she literally looked down on you. So I always felt I had to walk around with a bit of a chip on my shoulder and carry myself that way. Because you were asked, what is a D.O.? Are you a real doctor? I feel even my first couple of years in attendingship as a specialist, I would get, well, are you a real doctor? I said, well, the paper behind me on the wall with board certifications kind of says I am, but if you don't believe me, we can stop this conversation now. I had lost patience for it at that point. I said, I'm boarded by the same boards as everyone else. I did the interim ABIM. I did the ID boards. So if you're not comfortable with the letters after my name, you can leave. But in the beginning, yeah, you worked it harder. I didn't want to hear any excuses that, well, he's from a DO school, he's not that good. That was not going to fly. And I felt my colleagues who were of my year or the years that followed really pushed that envelope. I mean, we were the first year at NYITCOM to make the degree Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine. Okay, we weren't doctors of osteopathy. Not that I have anything against that, but we practice medicine. We were medical doctors as well. Yes, we learned osteopathic medicine. That's great, but we were doctors. And the word medicine should have been in the title of our diploma. So we made sure that was done. And we actually voted to get that changed. And I think it's been that way ever since the class of 1987. So it's important for us. But yeah, you have to have a chip on your shoulder to be a good DO. I think you just do. And I don't think it's a bad thing. But you got to tell them, I'm as good as you. I'm smart. I'm better. I'm not even good as you. I'm better than you. And I'm going to show you how. So yeah, it's really died down now. But I'm a 20-year attending now. So at this point, I don't think anyone's going to ask me anything. At least they don't dare. And even the DOs I see in my training program, who are in my residency program, I always give them a little high five. I said, DO, NYITCOM, where you from? And I usually give them a fist bump and, try to show them that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh,
you go to school and be a successful attending and be good at your craft. Because I think they need to see that. I think that's important. And I think that's the only trepidation when you walk into a DO school is that am I going to be good enough? Is anyone question my degree? Can I make a living? Or am I going to be shunned? And you're not. You're just going to work hard and carry yourself. That's all.
So takeaway advice is just be better than everyone else.
Be better. Carry a chip on your shoulder. If they question you, then show them up. If they want to ask you something on rounds, present it better. If they want to do it harder. If they want to make you think you're insignificant, then show them you're not. Get the patient reviews. Get the reviews on rounds. I just felt it was important for your dignity, I think. I mean, you're not working any less hard than anyone else. You're reading Harrison's, you're going through atlases, you're staying up at anatomy labs late, you're doing all this stuff. And there are bad doctors with MDs after their name too. Plenty of them. I've met them. So I just think DO guys have to have a chip on the DO physicians have to have a chip on their shoulder, especially in areas where people don't know what it is. I know California may be a little different, or certain parts of the country, middle of the country, probably a little more accepting, a little more everything else. But in Long Island, with sometimes very affluent areas, Long Island, and a lot of spoiled people, your training will be asked. And the only good thing I can tell you is, at the end of the day, no one ever asks really any more way into medical school. The last question they ever get asked is, which do you ID training? And all you got to do is say a Sloan Kettering. Everyone goes, ooh, ah, and, they're all happy. But again, I think I would have done well no matter where I went. Mm-hmm. You got to want.
So what was your experience like looking for a job?
Yeah, so that was another weird thing. I was in North Shore, and I thought I was going to join this big ID group. My friend had just joined, the guy who told me to put the pressure on the arterial line. He finished his ID fellowship 2 years before me. He joined this very big group that rounds, a private group. It used to be a private practice that rounds at North Shore. And I said, I want to be a private practice guy. I don't want to be a faculty guy. Let me see if they have an opening. So I sent the director of the group my resume and what I really wanted over. They had known me because I'd worked there. And he called me back and said, no, we don't have any openings. We're not looking to hire. I said, okay. I found an ad in the New England Journal of Medicine for an ID practice in Eastern Long Island. Now, if you know anything about Long Island, it's Eastern Long Island, Suffolk County is around the 35-mile mark to the end of the island of Suffolk County. It's a big county, goes all the way to Montauk. And I said, I don't know if I want to be that far out, but I said, let me go on the interview anyway. So I went on the interview. I met my still current partners, and they interviewed me, and they said, you'd be number 3 in the group. They gave you a nice starting salary plus a bonus after you passed your boards. Everything was split equally. It was what sold me on it. Call was 1 in 5, 1 in 3 at the time. Holidays are split, weekends are split. Like, I wasn't a Ponzi scheme. I wasn't walking in to do more call. And for whatever reason, for religious and cultural reasons, it turned out that my 2 senior partners happened to be Jewish. Like, you never have to work Christmas any day the rest of your life. And I said, great. And I covered their holidays. They covered mine. Everyone was happy. And I worked like a dog. I worked really hard. I was on call Q3, covering at the time 4 hospitals and killing it. But what's the funny part of the story is, as soon as I signed that contract and dropped it in the mailbox to join this group, the other group I applied to called me and said, oh, we have an opening if you're still interested. And I said, yeah, you know what? Fate is fate. I'm going to ride it out here and try this situation and make a name for myself a little further east. And best decision I made, probably, in the scheme of things. So I knew I was going to get a job coming out of Sloan Kettering. I knew there were some ID practices. I just didn't know essentially where I was going to wind up. I just knew I was so much more a clinical bedside guy. So I wanted a private practice, again, thing that doesn't exist anymore, but private practice where you spent most of your time seeing patients. Like, I didn't want to be a faculty appointment where I had to spend a research block or get a grant or run journal club. I enjoyed bedside patient care. That's what I wanted to do. That's what this job provided. So it was a no-brainer at that point.
Definitely.
So I know my strength. My strength is face-to-face and bedside patient care, not labs and writing for grants. And it just never appealed to me. So it happened to be lucky enough to find the niche that worked for me.
Now we're going to change gears again and now transition to a bit more into your personal life.
Sure.
So if you wouldn't mind, I know we touched on this before, but if you could elaborate on your experience with starting and raising a family with a spouse who was also a physician.
Yeah. So again, as fate would have it, when we made this interview and I took this job, she was finishing her internal medicine residency program in a place in we lived in Queens. So I drove into Manhattan every day to Sloan Kettering, and she took what is now known as the Jackie Robinson Parkway to Methodist Hospital in Brooklyn every day. So that was our commute. We said goodbye in the morning. She went south. I went over the bridge. And I finished my fellowship when she finished her residency. Now, she had thought about doing a fellowship, maybe in pulmonary critical care, which was an interest to her, but ultimately decided we were married. We got married in 1999. It was now 2002 when we were finishing. At some point, it was maybe time to have a family and figure out what was going to happen. So her sisters and all her sisters and my parents lived in Suffolk County at the time. So when we took this job, I was like, I don't want to work this far out. I don't want to be this far out. I don't want to be closer to Manhattan. But it turned out to be the best thing because when we were working, she managed to get a part-time job to start. So she was working 4 days a week, no weekends. Oh, no, 1 weekend a month, I think. I should correct me. And then we had our first child at 2003. So, and then 2.5 years later, baby number 2 in 2005. So she wanted to get back to work. She certainly earned her stripes to work and she enjoyed working. So my mother would watch the baby on Fridays all day, which was 5 minutes from her office. Her sister would watch the baby the other couple of days. I was off on Tuesdays as my scheduled day off. So I became daddy daycare on Tuesdays and learned how to become a dad really fast, which was much more scary than residency has ever been. And she had kid on Thursdays. So we carved out a child rearing schedule that worked. And it was exhausting. Little children are exhausting. And so I can remember just like getting up and I was we used to split feeding duties in the middle of the night because we were both working. So I remember picking up my kid at 2:00 in the morning one day, like burping him with my tie. I couldn't reach anything. Like, here, burp this. Like I threw my tie on. One day I was so tired. He was up and he was not a good sleeper. And I broke my toe because I kicked it on I had a very old, big Italian bassinet that was in the room next to us that the kid was sleeping. So I stubbed my toe so bad I broke my toe. and I had to round that weekend. So I actually wound up making rounds on a long weekend on a surgical shoe with a broken toe because I broke it feeding my kid. So it had challenges, right? We closed on our house and signed our life away. And while we were doing this, after 8 hours in a banker's office signing away my life, I made rounds in the hospital afterwards. So it was really hard, but again, really rewarding because we both got it. Like, it was never like, oh, well, you take care of the kid and I'm the doctor here. You just, we were on a completely, I mean, God, I would not be the first to admit she did more work than I did. She's the mother. So she was, she was in charge. But ultimately, we shared almost all the responsibilities we had to because it wasn't going to work any other way. And God bless our families who surrounded us with so much love and support. So our kid never saw a daycare center. So never came home with 25-year infections. Our kids never it wasn't even a lot of play dates. They were always in the care of family. Mm-hmm. So I could I took a deep breath. You drop your child off someplace, you don't know who's taking care of them. Anything could happen. But when you drop them off with family, it's, all right. I didn't have to worry. It was quite lovely, actually, quite a blessing. So yeah, it takes a village, and believe me, I had help, but having someone who gets it or understood what happened, it pays off at the end when they're older, but in the beginning, boy, is it hard. Lots of sleep deprivation, lots of crankiness, and unfortunately, a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Temper, or things you want to say to a patient after in a hospital, you have to hold in all day because you can't. Or you'd be fired immediately. So you can be a little snippy to each other after a long day of work. Her being in an office full of people, primary care, and me doing hospital medicine, you got a little snippy at the end of the day. And again, that level of understanding probably saved a million arguments because we just got it. Yeah. So it was a hard job. It's the hardest job in the world, parent. Residency, walk in the park. Fellowship, not a problem. Raise 2 kids, hardest thing you can ever hope to do. So
combine the two, and then
yeah, it's tough. But again, best and hardest job in the world.
Now, can you share with us your wife's story and how you managed during that time?
Yeah, so we'd met, and I told you in residency we got married in 1999, and everything was really hunky dory. I got to say, we had our children. We traveled. That was our passion, probably. So we took a lot of trips. Took the kids everywhere: Costa Rica, Alaska, Wyoming, wherever we can go. That was our vice as a family to get away. So it was around the end of 2018. It was around New Year's time. Around that end of the year, Christmas, New Year's. She had been complaining of a cough. The kids were a little sick too. And how this all worked out was a cough. And I said, you got a cough? I was only not sick one. Kids were coughing. She was coughing. I said, probably just a bug. The cough lingered, and it lingered. So I said, you got to go. I know a friend is a pulmonologist. I said, go see him, get an x-ray, find out what's going on, see if you have pneumonia. Maybe you just need antibiotics and you have a post-viral pneumonia. Spoken like an ID guy, like I had the idea of anything else. And I remember I was sitting in the St. Charles emergency room. She was in the doctor's office 2 miles away. She shot up her phone. She showed me a picture of the x-ray. It was a large pleural effusion. I said, that's weird. I said, I have an empire. So they set her up immediately for drainage. So we were in the interventional radiology suite in the hospital a couple hours later. And I'm watching the drainage, and it's more blood than anything else. It's like a bloody tap, and it's maybe, I said, it's hard for an empyema. It's strange. Like nothing had crossed my mind that this could possibly be anything worse than an infection. They drained it. They sent her home on antibiotics. I said, okay, we'll see how the antibiotics go, see if you feel better. And she, being a more astute doctor than me, turned to me and said, I don't think this is an infection. I said, all right, well, let's have to see. So about maybe 72 hours later, we get a call. There's some unusual cells on the cytology, but we don't know what they are. No one could figure out what it was. So as it turns out, it took a very long time. So it was done at Stony Brook. Their pathologist couldn't figure it out. They sent it to Sloan Kettering for a second opinion. And it turned out to be this they think it looks mesothelioid or sarcomatous. It's mesothelioma. Why would you get mesothelioma? She never smoked. She didn't work in a shipyard. Father didn't work in, wasn't in asbestos in the house, as far as I know. And as it turns out, we went for a VATS, and then we went for a VATS procedure. They stuck a camera in, and her whole pleura was studded with something. So they took more samples, and I know the doctor who runs a giant oncology conglomerate out here called New York Blood and Cancer, and I said, this guy, Dr. Basarco, who I've known, we were residents together. I said, you got to do something. So he got her set up for chemo right away, treated as if it was almost a mesothelioma. Got around to chemotherapy and got an appointment with the best thoracic surgeon in the city, this Dr. Flores in Mount Sinai, and said, go see him. So this I won't forget because certain things will stick with you. We went to the city, said, oh yeah, it's pleural based. You finish this round of chemo, we'll set you up for resection. You should be able to get most of it out. I was, well, that was encouraging. It was Valentine's Day. That's why I remember the story. So we went and had, for Valentine's Day lunch, dirty water dogs, 2 dirty water hot dogs in the corner of Mount Sinai and 2 sodas. Laughing, like this was the most romantic Valentine's Day gift ever. And as it turns out, she ended up just developing worsening pain and worsening respiratory distress. And he said, bring her in right away. We'll get her in there. So brought her in right away. And he said, I'm going to take her to a possible pneumonectomy and take out the right lung. And we'll see, though she had a scan that maybe showed some already activity under the diaphragm on the adrenals or in the abdominal cavity. I said, all right, do what you got to do. And then he came to me in the surgical waiting room and said, yeah, it's all attached to the great vessels. There's nothing I could do. You could try some radiation. And there's a mesothelioma specialist at Sloan Kettering you should go see. I said, fine. She knew. I told her the diagnosis as soon as she was awake on the vent. She just shook her head. And we went to Sloan Kettering, and there was possibly a trial, but we couldn't get in for another 2 weeks. They couldn't get the drug, or 3 weeks. But try radiation. Radiation did nothing. Essentially, she was getting oxygen at home, wearing a nasal BiPAP, becoming progressively short of breath. But compounded by the fact she was in pain, she was taking pain meds, so I was worried about her respiratory rate. It all came to a head one night. She had to bring her to the hospital. She couldn't breathe and wound up on a ventilator, and they did a CAT scan, and it was just wildly advanced. So this is where I tell doctors and anyone in the field, you have to practice what you preach. We had talked about patients. The best thing about marrying a doctor is you can bounce patients off each other. We talk all the time. Medicine teaches you very 2 things: how you want to live and how you don't want to die. And she goes, you're not going to do this to me. No feeding tube, no tracheostomy, none of that. I said, you're right. I wouldn't do that to you. It would have been cruel and unusual punishment. So that's it. We woke her up. She wrote out her goodbyes. And she passed away. So again, 80 days from diagnosis to passing. And that doesn't leave you a lot of time for closure or almost anything. So I just could say that she probably made me the best person I could be. And I had more than 20 years than many people have their whole life. So I'm grateful for that.
I'm so sorry.
It's the cruelty of being on the other side. And I will say, as a doctor, the true cruelty is feeling helpless. Like I wanted to do something. And as it was happening, as it was evolving, we both knew there was nothing to do. And that maybe is the worst feeling in a profession where you take charge and do things. Not being able to do that was the hardest thing in the world. So, yeah, it was just difficult. I never thought it would be that way. You had to be calm and you had to do what your loved one wanted and not necessarily what they want. And you have to respect people's dignity. And I don't think people understand that enough now, that you can keep someone. I always tell patients this: often my go-to phrase is, you can keep someone alive, but are they living? And I could have kept her alive, but she wouldn't be living her best life. Mm. So at 45 years old, she passed away and left a legacy. And like I said, I'm over the anger. I'm over most of it. Sadness never really goes away. But yeah, so that's, but NYITCOM started. So it's the best thing I got out of medical school was a wife. So that's hard to beat.
Yeah. Did you feel like being a physician, I know you touched on this, and her also being a physician, you were just hyper aware of what was going on?
I wish I was stupider. We both wish we were stupider. Mm-hmm. But she was astute. And she was a realistic woman to begin with. Her patients loved her because she just didn't pull any punches. She called it as she saw it. And she turned to me, she goes, "I'm going to die. You know that, right?" I did not want to admit it, did not want to come to grips with it. But we're both smart people, both two board certified doctors, looking at x-rays, looking at the pathology. And when the guy says, "Oh, there's only like 17 cases that's recorded in the literature ever, and it's a combination of two very terrible tumors. It's a mix of a sarcoma," which everyone knows what the outcome for that disease is, "and mesothelioma." The writing was on the wall. So I wish I was a lot dumber, because it's hard to be hopeful when you ultimately know the truth. So that was the hard part. I think in the lack of time to really have the closure you wanted. But conversely, after 20 years of marriage, we had nothing left unsaid. So at least I don't have regrets in that regard. But being too smart is not always a good thing. Mm-hmm. Being powerless, I think, is the worst feeling a doctor can ever have. Mm-hmm. Whether it's professionally with a patient or even closer to home with a family member. You want to do everything and you can't. So it humbles you. And I think I told you this when I worked through the pandemic. In the subsequent years as an ID doctor, where I was seeing 50, 60 people a day, and young people younger than my wife even dying of COVID when there was no treatment, nothing to offer anybody. It gave me some perspective in that I'm not the only unlucky man in the world. This is happening minute by minute in hospitals around the world, people losing loved ones who shouldn't be going from a pandemic that is wiping out people. And not that it gave me solace in terms of my life, but it gave me perspective and an ability to move on. I think the pandemic saved my life by being able to work and give something back to help anybody else rather than sit at home and feel sorry for myself. Best thing I did was work. It just felt good. So the whole process between the pandemic and what I went through personally is the most humbling thing in terms of just teaching you your place in the universe, in terms of how big the world is and how scary it can be sometimes, and how there's so much we have to learn as a nation and as a people that have science to conquer things to come. So yeah, it was going through that death and then followed by the pandemic was an unbelievable combination of things. But like I said, I may be the only crazy person who said the pandemic may have saved me, because I just put my shoes back on and said, I got to go to work. If I could do nothing else, I can help people. If I sit home, I'm just going to be home and miserable. And I had to set the example for my children to show them that life is going to knock you down. It's not how hard you get knocked down. It's how you get up. So you got to get up. So, and I think I can't probably say it better than that.
Yeah. I know you also mentioned the COVID pandemic, but do you feel like you have a new perspective on just ID medicine as a whole, like as a physician now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you realize the world is going to end much more likely from a microorganism than an atomic bomb. Right? With outbreaks of various viruses now that we're reading about things, and the more we encroach on deforest areas that shouldn't be deforested, and we bring people into contact with nature of things that were not meant to be pushed together, death will be from a microbe, not a bomb and not a nuclear power plant and not the ozone layer. It gives you perspective of how something so small can do so much damage, and how it gives you really a lot of perspective of how significant where our place as humans in the world is, that's older than us. These microbes will be here long after we're gone. It gives you a little bit of some pretty harrowing perspective, because watching it evolve and being helpless, especially during wave one, offering treatments that weren't going to work, and just figuring out who was going to live and who was going to die. It was one of the scariest things I've ever seen. So it definitely, like I said, humbles you to where your place is in the world. And also makes you understand how important a world based on science and fact is, when it all got discarded and people were questioning science, and people don't understand, be making up their own facts, their own studies, their own information, how dangerous that is to us to exist as a species or race, whatever your nationality is. I used to tell people, when they politicized all this, that COVID doesn't care if you're black, white, Asian, Muslim, Christian, Jewish. It killed everyone equally. I promise you that. And I tell them, I see it all the time. It was amazing how hard it was to get that point through to some people, though. And I found that fascinating, too. Like, we were more united as a country after a horrible terrorist attack in the World Trade Centers than we were over a microbe that was killing so many more people. I still to this day don't understand that. I don't. It wasn't personal, but everyone was taking it personal. I just let the smart people do their job, stay out of their way. I don't go to my mechanic and tell them how to fix my car. You should probably go to the NIH with your high school degree and tell them how to fix a pandemic. You should stay in your lane. Like, we have people who are smart in fields. We should use their knowledge, not belittle them. I found that whole thing very distasteful. So yeah, this has been from 2019 to now. Wow, it's been an interesting, rough run for me. But like I said, I think I've come out understanding, a little more humble about my place in the world.
Yeah.
So, and how valuable each day really is.
So going off of that, given the extensive time commitment that medicine requires, many students enter the field with a delayed gratification mentality, whether that's about starting a family or paying off our loans and getting a spending salary. We forget sometimes, or we don't consider how precious our time is, and that in fact may be limited. So given your journey, do you have any thoughts based on this?
I think the journey is to work hard and play hard. I think pour yourself into being a good doctor. And when you leave your job for the day, whatever it is, intensivist, hospitalist, primary care doctor, when you come home or when you put your head on that pillow at night to finally close your eyes, know you didn't cut any corners. You weren't lazy. You provided the best care you could for your patient. And know your time that you have free will be less than any other probably person you know. Use that time valuably to enjoy the fruits of your labors. Look, we're not going to starve. We're, as physicians, we will be well compensated. We will make a good living, have a nice life. That is fine. And it's earned. But I think that balance between when you go to work, I think the easiest way of saying it is people either work to live or live to work. So which one is it? Work to live or live to work. So which one is it? I don't live to work, but it is my part of defines who I am. And I think you can't escape that. You put so much time, and part of being a doctor is part of your core, who you are, what you do, how you exist. And you shouldn't deny that. And when you're not working, enjoy life. Go travel, go see the world. I was in Greece last summer, in between pandemics waves. And I was sitting in an arena in some island, some amphitheater that was built, I don't know how many years ago, 7,000 years ago. And I was sitting there, and they were saying how the natives used to sit there. And I was realizing I was sitting on a seat that someone else sat on 7,000 years ago. And that how really we are but a grain of sand passing through the world in that one instance.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's perspective. So you're not, if you don't let the little things consume you, medicine should teach you that. At the end of the day, big things consume you. Love your family, take care of your children. But getting caught up in very little minutia, it's in the grand scheme, it's like that pebble. It's like it's so small.
Mm-hmm.
So I think get that perspective early in life and not worry about everything else. Be good to your patients, be good to your family, and enjoy your free time. Everything else will settle itself out.
Mm-hmm.
It will. You'll make money. You'll pay your debts. You'll pay your loans. You'll pay your mortgage. You'll get your kids through school. But whether Johnny ate green beans for the first time on Tuesday or didn't, at the end of the day, doesn't really matter. The time you may think it does, but it really doesn't. So I think that's important. I think in keeping a sense of balance about where you are in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important. I think that's the only thing I could stress, because it could be gone. Everything could be taken away from you in a second.
Mm-hmm.
So try to live. It's so corny to say that life of no regrets. Everyone's gonna have some regret, there's something in their life. But understand, you could be turned upside down. Your whole world could be turned upside down, like mine. And I didn't see it coming. I had planned a future where we bought an apartment in Manhattan, and we were traveling, and our kids were in college, and it's all gone.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to learn to adjust. I think that's the hardest part of this generation, not even so much yours, but the ones behind you. We weeded out the coping mechanism. Everyone's not allowed to fail. Everyone's not allowed to struggle. Oh, you're allowed to fail. You're supposed to fail. You're supposed to struggle. It's okay to have a hard time, but you can't crawl up in a ball every time a little thing doesn't go your way.
Mm-hmm.
You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and stand tall. So no one's around to feel sorry for you. You still got to handle yourself and take care of those, carry your business, take care of those around you. So I think that's my take home point from the pandemic, some travel, and a tragic life event.
Right. That's very valuable advice. And I think it's better to take it on early rather than later.
Exactly. Just don't cope. You got to cope. You're going to fail. It's going to be hard. It was an easy job. Everyone would do it. It's not an easy job. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to suck. You're going to question it. You're going to hate patients. You're going to fall down. You're going to feel miserable. You're going to make a bad day. You're going to miss a diagnosis. All those things are going to happen to you. Yeah. But if you let it consume you and not take apart, realize that it's just a small part of what you're going to do and impacting people's lives, then don't bother getting up. You got to get up. Got to keep answering the bell. So I guess that's the easiest way of saying it. Yes.
Can you tell us more about the medical school and high school scholarship funds you've created in your wife's honor?
Sure. So when she passed away, my younger of my two sons, my middle schooler at the time, decided to honor her memory he wanted to raise money. Mm-hmm. So he made two very impassioned speeches in the middle of the school musicals and sat outside with his friends, and they set up a collection box. And they raised almost, I think, $8,000. So we made I think a $5,000 donation to the American Cancer Society in her name. And they actually came in a nice photo op with a big picture of the check and all the money he raised. And then we started a $1,000 a year scholarship to a student graduating the high school that has an interest in medicine. And we've handed out the first one last year, and the second one's about to be awarded tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And we get to screen the applicants. They send us 5 or 6 people we think we like, and then we kind of weigh in who we would like. Medical school, I started personally reaching out to friends and family. And one of my wife's classmates, his name is Dr. Leader at NYITCOM. She's wonderful. She heard about Natalie's passing. She said, you should start a scholarship and meet with the dean and come and meet with them. I said, all right, fine. I went in. And since inception, I've raised my family and friends and the people. I've raised about $28,000, $29,000. And we decided to have an endowed scholarship, and we give out $5,000 every year. And we gave out the first award last year to a young widow, ironically enough, woman from, I believe, Ukraine, who was going into OBGYN and had a child. And I wanted to give it to mothers or even parents specifically, preferably mothers, but it could be, this year's award is going to a man, people raising children while trying to be doctors, to help them out in any way you can. Because I know it's the hardest thing to juggle, being a doctor and being a parent. So we've raised, like I said, around, we have the largest endowed scholarship, private scholarship at NYITCOM. So proud to say that. And we continue to raise money every year. And the next second award will be going out went out because they invited me to graduation, which I haven't been through in 23 years, which was cool. I actually sat through graduation, loved it, and brought me back a little bit. And I'm having lunch with the scholarship recipient next Tuesday in the afternoon, and they're going to have a lunch with the dean, and I got to meet him and take some pictures and everything else. Mm-hmm. So it feels good to give back, and it feels good to see something with her name on it. And I think, again, as I told you, part of who you are as being a doctor, part of who she was is a doctor. So to have that name carried out, hopefully ad infinitum, at least as long as I'm walking the planet, is, I think, the biggest honor I can give her. So it's really helped me give back. And I think, maybe that's where I end up one day. Who knows? Maybe I wind up back in academics and teaching, or once I'm done killing myself as a clinician, maybe I wind up doing some teaching back in NYITCOM or something like that. I'd love to. I don't think they need me right now, but that might be where this all ends up for me. Mm-hmm. But it's been a great experience. I think she touched a lot of people's lives. I mean, I know she did, based on the turnout at her services and everything else. And we still share patients who she had as a primary care doctor who have seen me as an infectious disease doctor, and they come in crying all the time and telling me how much they miss her and everything else. So she impacted a lot of people. So I think it's important I give something back to somebody, especially a parent or someone striving to be a doctor, to make the world a better place. And it's kind of let me come full circle and bring everything, kind of close a loop for me.
That's really beautiful.
So it's really nice.
So we're going to end with our final question. What is the best piece of advice you got throughout your education that you would like to pass on to other students?
I mean, I think of all the professors I had, at least in medical school, there was a doctor who since passed away named Dr. Mancini. He was the professor of pharmacology at NYITCOM. As a matter of fact, his course was the hardest. He pushed and pushed and pushed. And to succeed in his course, you actually had to do very well. I actually won his pharmacology award when I graduated, but he was an inspiration because he didn't take it easy on you. He made it hard. And to do well, you had to put the work in. There was no skimming. And I ran into him years later, and he was a patient in the hospital, ironically enough. I was attending. This has been maybe 15 years after I was out of medical school, maybe longer. And he wheeled by me in the hallway, and I stopped. I didn't even know he was there. And he went, "Hello, Phil." And it took me completely by surprise. And I think the message is nothing is given to you. You have to earn it. Continue to be curious. What drives a good doctor is a curiosity. Oh, what about this? I don't know anything about that. Maybe I should read up about this, or maybe I should read up about that. I think that curiosity, that fire, which probably draws all of us into this, don't let it go out. Mm-hmm. Stay motivated, stay curious, and it's hard to do from all the pressures of family and friends and children and real life stuff that we live in. But even to this day, 20 years as an attending, 25 years at a medical school, I'll still get a case and it'll charge me up, and I'll try to pass that to the residents and say, "What about this? Well, you see, it's cool." And you got to keep that going. And whatever it is, whatever your discipline is, whatever makes you go, find something, because I think to keep that fire going will only make you a better doctor. And take the time. The only other piece of wisdom I can give you, because I'm from a hybrid computer / note generation, don't look at the computer screen so much. The notes are not as important as taking care of the patient. Be that patient's advocate. Don't put your back to them while you're typing. Or don't be so worried about whether the note hits 17 Roman numerals because it has to get billed properly. Then you understand the crux of the case. I think when I used to write my notes on the charts, you wrote and thought at the same time, so you were a good clinician. Now everyone's copying and pasting notes and copying and pasting items, and everyone has stopped thinking because they're so just worried about getting the notes done and following the algorithm. The algorithm isn't always right. Patients don't read the algorithm. So take care of the patient individually, make eye contact, take that time to get to know them a little bit. You'll be a much better doctor for. So I guess that's my probably parting wisdom.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Dr. Nizza, for sharing your story with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's actually felt very nice to talk about it, and it's been a while. So I wish you well. I wish you well in your journey. And if anyone calls or has contact questions about infectious disease or any questions, they could feel free to contact me with my email, or they could shoot me a message. I'm more than happy to lend a hand.
This concludes our episode of Do or Do Not. Send all inquiries, comments, suggestions, and even let us know if there's someone you want us to interview to doordonotpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at Do or Do Not Podcast for updates. If you enjoyed our podcast, please share it with your classmates and administration. We have plenty of more interviews lined up, and we're excited to share them with you. This is Tianyu Shea. Thank you guys so much for listening to Do or Do Not.